In 2024, the global wellness industry crossed $6 trillion. That's more than the entire GDP of Japan. Meditation apps have hundreds of millions of downloads. Self-help is one of the fastest-growing publishing categories in history. Happiness coaching is now a profession. And yet, across the United States and Western Europe, loneliness is at record highs. Anxiety disorders have surged. Antidepressant use has climbed for 3 consecutive decades. Young people, who have access to more tools for self-improvement than any generation before them, are reporting the lowest levels of meaning and life satisfaction on record. Something doesn't add up. Here's the question this video is going to answer. What if the way we pursue happiness is the very thing making us miserable?
This isn't a soft argument about slowing down and appreciating small moments. The evidence, from neuroscience, cross-cultural psychology, and 50 years of economic data, points to something more structural, something built into how the brain works and amplified by how modern culture is designed. To understand it, we first have to go inside the brain. There's a chemical called dopamine. Most people think it's the pleasure chemical. That's not right. Dopamine doesn't fire when you get the reward. It fires when you're chasing it. It's the chemical of anticipation, not satisfaction. Here's how it works. When you encounter something potentially rewarding, a notification, a new goal, a purchase you're about to make, a promotion you're angling for, neurons in a region called the ventral tegmental area release dopamine along the mesolimbic pathway. This creates a surge of desire, focus, and motivation. It feels like excitement. It feels like meaning. But that feeling is designed to get you moving toward the reward, not to make you happy once you have it. The moment you achieve the thing you were chasing, the promotion, the validation, the number on the scale, dopamine levels drop back to baseline, sometimes below it. The brain, which spent weeks in anticipation, suddenly has nothing to anticipate. And that gap between what you expected to feel and what you actually feel is psychologically brutal. Psychologist Tal Ben-Shahar gave this a name: the arrival fallacy. The belief that once you reach a specific goal, lasting happiness will follow. Research consistently shows it doesn't. The brain adjusts too fast. What felt like a destination becomes, within weeks or months, just a new baseline. So the brain starts searching again. This is the hedonic treadmill. Humans adapt, rapidly and almost automatically, to improved circumstances. Lottery winners experience an initial happiness surge. Within a year, their reported happiness levels return to where they were before. The same pattern holds for promotions, new relationships, new homes, new possessions. The brain doesn't linger in pleasure. It normalizes it, then reaches for something bigger. And modern life is specifically engineered to accelerate this cycle. Social media platforms are built around variable reward loops, the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. Streaming services autoplay the next episode before you've processed the last. E-commerce delivers the dopamine of the chase on demand. Every system you interact with daily is optimized for one thing: keeping you in pursuit. The more intensely you chase the feeling, the more the brain recalibrates to raise the threshold. What once felt exciting becomes ordinary. So the search expands: a better job, more followers, a bigger house, a newer version of yourself. That's not happiness. That's a system running hot and adapting against you. Now zoom out. Because this isn't just a story about individual brain chemistry, it shows up at the scale of entire nations. Here's a number worth sitting with. In 1973, US GDP per capita was roughly $25,000 in today's dollars. By 2024, it had climbed to approximately $70,000, nearly tripled. By every material measure, Americans are dramatically better off than their grandparents were 50 years ago. More income, more technology, more access to everything. And yet, life satisfaction scores in the US have barely moved. The General Social Survey has been tracking American happiness since 1972. Across 50 years of data, with income roughly tripling, the average score has stayed flat, oscillating between 6.9 and 7.2 on a 10-point scale. Western Europe tells the same story. UK GDP roughly doubled since 1973. Life satisfaction? Flat. France, Germany, Italy, the same pattern. More wealth, same happiness. Economists call this the Easterlin paradox. It's been debated for decades, but the data keeps pointing in the same direction. Past a certain threshold of material security, more money doesn't move the happiness needle in any sustained way. This raises an obvious question. If wealth doesn't produce lasting happiness, why do entire societies organize themselves around getting more of it? Part of the answer is cultural.
Western societies, the US especially, built an ideology around the pursuit of happiness as both a personal responsibility and a measurable outcome. The Declaration of Independence names it as an unalienable right. Self-help culture turned it into a project. Wellness culture turned it into an industry. And somewhere in that process, happiness stopped being something that emerged from a well-lived life and became something you were supposed to optimize for. That shift has consequences.
Psychologist Iris Maus at UC Berkeley spent years studying people who place an unusually high value on being happy. Her findings cut against the obvious assumption. People who strongly believe happiness is the most important thing in life consistently report lower well-being than people who don't prioritize it as intensely. The mechanism works like this. When you treat happiness as a primary goal, you start monitoring your emotional state constantly. You check in, you evaluate. Am I happy right now? Should I be happier? Why don't I feel more satisfied? That self-monitoring creates a gap between your actual emotional experience and your expectation of it. And that gap produces disappointment. Maus also found that highly happiness-focused individuals reported significantly more loneliness. Not because they had fewer relationships. When you're using relationships primarily as inputs to your own emotional state, you're not fully present in them. You're extracting, and people can feel that. There's a broader cultural version of this same problem. Barbara Ehrenreich, in Bright-Sided, documented what she called the tyranny of positive thinking. The way forced optimism in American culture, in corporate environments, in wellness communities, suppressed honest emotional expression and made people feel guilty for experiencing sadness, fear, or uncertainty. Negative emotions got rebranded as failures of mindset rather than legitimate parts of human experience. Mark Manson put a sharper edge on this argument. In The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, he wrote that the self-help industry sells an unrealistic emotional standard, that the goal of life is to feel good, and feeling bad is a problem to be solved. His point is blunt. Life involves unavoidable pain. Maturity means choosing which struggles are worth enduring, not chasing a permanent state of emotional ease. Across very different disciplines, the same conclusion keeps surfacing. The direct pursuit of happiness doesn't work, and the harder you push it, the worse it gets. But here's where it gets interesting. Because the evidence doesn't say happiness is impossible, it says we've been approaching it from the wrong direction. Martin Seligman, the founder of positive psychology, spent decades trying to identify what produces lasting well-being. His answer wasn't pleasure. His PERMA model broke down sustained well-being into 5 elements: positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. Notice what's in there. Relationships, meaning, engagement, which includes states of deep focus and challenge, what psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi called flow. These aren't passive pleasure states. They involve effort, difficulty, and commitment to something outside yourself. Viktor Frankl reached the same conclusion from a completely different direction. A Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, Frankl watched people endure unimaginable suffering in concentration camps. What he observed was that the people who survived psychologically were the ones who found meaning in their suffering. His conclusion, developed into a school of therapy called logotherapy, was direct. Happiness cannot be pursued. It must ensue. It's a byproduct. It follows from dedicating yourself to something or someone beyond your own emotional state. The longitudinal data backs this up. The Harvard Grant Study, one of the longest-running studies of human development ever conducted, tracked men across their entire adult lives. Its conclusion, reached after over 80 years of data collection. The quality of your relationships is the single strongest predictor of life satisfaction and physical health. Not wealth, not status, not achievement. Relationships. This shows up cross-culturally in a telling way. Latin American countries, Costa Rica, Mexico, Colombia, consistently report positive emotion scores that outperform their GDP levels. They regularly rank among the world's highest in subjective well-being, despite moderate incomes. The most consistent explanation in the research is social cohesion, the density and quality of communal relationships. Meanwhile, the US and Western Europe, with dramatically higher incomes, report high and rising rates of loneliness. The pattern is consistent. Happiness correlates more strongly with social connection and meaning than with material acquisition or direct emotional optimization. There's one more piece of the picture worth adding. The brain is not fixed. Neuroscience has established that repeated behaviors and mental habits can reshape neural pathways over time, a process called neuroplasticity. The habits you practice consistently aren't just behaviors. They're restructuring your neural architecture. And this cuts both ways. Spend years training yourself to chase the next achievement,
the next stimulus, the next hit of validation, and you're building pathways optimized for pursuit. The brain gets better at wanting and worse at arriving.
But the same mechanism works in reverse. Practices like gratitude, deep social connection, meaningful work, and mindfulness. Meta-analyses of positive psychology interventions show these produce moderate but reliable improvements in life satisfaction over time. Not because they flood the brain with dopamine, because they build emotional flexibility, shrink the gap between expectation and experience, and train attention toward what's present rather than what's missing. Think of the brain like a house with a thermostat. Every intense experience, achievement, acquisition, stimulation is like turning the heat way up. The house feels warm for a moment, but the thermostat is designed to maintain balance. As soon as the temperature spikes, the system cools it back down. Turn the heat up every day, and the thermostat adapts. What once felt warm now feels normal. So you turn it higher. Bigger achievements, more stimulation, more novelty. But the system keeps adjusting. Eventually, you're burning more energy than ever just to feel the same warmth you once got for free. That's the paradox. The harder you chase the feeling, the more your brain trains itself to stop feeling it. Here's what 50 years of data and a century of psychological research converge on. Happiness is not a target. The cultures with the highest reported well-being aren't the ones that pursue it most aggressively. The individuals who score highest on sustained life satisfaction aren't the ones constantly optimizing for it. They're the ones building lives around meaning, relationships, discipline, and contribution, and letting happiness arrive as a consequence. The modern wellness industry, for all its sophistication, is largely built on the wrong premise. It took the insight that humans can influence their well-being and turned it into a $6 trillion project of continuous self-improvement, emotional optimization, and happiness chasing. The data suggests this may have made the original problem worse. Emily Esfahani-Smith, in The Power of Meaning, put it clearly. The search for happiness makes people unhappy. The search for meaning does not. The Easterlin paradox, the dopamine research, Iris Mouse's loneliness studies, the Harvard Grant study, the cross-cultural data on life satisfaction, all of it points toward the same underlying truth. We live in the most materially abundant, self-help saturated, happiness-optimized era in human history. We've never had more tools to feel good. And the data suggests we're not particularly good at it. The problem might not be that we haven't found the right techniques. The problem might be that we're still asking the wrong question.